In suburban Canberra, this increasingly cluttered house has become the headquarters for Catherine Job's grand obsession. An obsession to recognise 150 forgotten ANZACs. With what you've discovered, are you challenging our ANZAC history?
I'm not challenging history, I'm presenting history. This is true. This is what happened. This is their story. And if you deny them this story, then they don't have one. They're obliterated. They cease to exist.
They are the soldiers of the 1st Field Company of Australian Engineers, young men from New South Wales who were airbrushed out of the official military records, but in fact were in the very front row of Gallipoli history. It's about these engineers now finding their rightful place in our ANZAC history, isn't it?
It's about their story being told. This is the engineers, the 1st Field Company engineers, and that their heroics as part of the history of what happened on that day and subsequently.
The formidable and forthright Catherine Job was an ABC journalist for many years. But now, there's only one story she wants to tell.
Absence of evidence is now being turned into evidence of absence. And their story is being not just forgotten, but it's gotten to the stage where it is being denied.
Catherine Job's quest actually began 3 decades ago with a simple aim to find out how her charismatic great-uncle died at Gallipoli.
He was the tall, handsome, blue-eyed, laughing, joke-cracking life of the party that everyone loved. Everyone just loved him.
Cleve Page loved adventure and had been one of the first to sign up in 1914. He joined as sapper number 70, was sent to Egypt for military training, then on to Gallipoli, where he was killed on the day of the landing. But there were always conflicting reports about his death. What story to believe has intrigued 3 generations of Catherine's family for the best part of a century. But it gets even more confusing. The family always knew Cleve was an army engineer from New South Wales, and they believed he was one of the first to land at Gallipoli. However, the experts told them they were wrong.
And the answer was immediate. No, there were no New South Wales units in the Dawn landing. No, your family's got the story wrong. Everyone wants an ANZAC hero, you know, so it's not surprising that these things are made up.
The official history of the Gallipoli landings by renowned historian Charles Bean makes no mention of 150 engineers. He says the very first ashore were all infantrymen from the 9th, 10th and 11th battalions of the 3rd Brigade. Did you doubt your family's story, their version of Cleve Page and the way and how he died at Gallipoli?
At an intellectual level, you have to, because you have to go with the evidence. And if all the experts said that they weren't there and they weren't in any of the history books, then clearly something was wrong. And I wanted to know where they were. If they weren't there, where were they?
So, like any good journalist, Catherine started searching for the truth.
1st Field Company engineers, you know, ANZAC engineers, 25th of April 1915.
By digging in the digital world for original archives, not rehashed history. Catherine's first breakthrough was finding and then interpreting the original battle orders for the Gallipoli landings. And hidden away in the fine print, undiscovered by so many others, was the proof.
They were there.
Lost in history for all this time, but there was the record.
It said my family hadn't lied, you know, but they were there.
Not only were they there, as it turns out, the humble engineers were in the very front of the first boats carrying the infantrymen. But when the official records were written by the commanding officers, all infantrymen, the engineers were overlooked. Brigadier Wayne Budd is the head of our engineering corps today.
It's a fabric of the story that's never been seen before, and it actually allows you to see how the employment of engineers unfolds in the fog of war.
Catherine now had enough leads to dig even deeper.
And up came a 1st Field Company engineer reference. And it wasn't on any official site. It was on some bloke's private website. And it was a diary. It was an ANZAC diary of a 1st Field Company engineer. His number was 53. Now my heart leapt. Cleve's number was 70. They had to have known each other.
No sooner did we come into view of the enemy when they opened out with a very deadly fire. One of my pals, Cleve Page, was hit in the head, killed stone dead. He dropped at my feet and I vowed vengeance on his slayers.
These are the words of Tom Drain, sapper number 53 and best mate of Cleve Page.
It made your blood boil, and then that is the time you get...
Faithfully recorded in his war diary and read by his great-grandson Andrew.
He wanted people to know what happened to his mates. And I think that if he was here today and knew that his words had helped Catherine understand what happened to Cleve, I think he'd be very, very happy about that.
Tom Drain's diary answered the question of how Cleve Page died. At the instant, his feet touched the Gallipoli shore. But it still wasn't enough for Catherine. She continued searching and eventually found over 30 original diaries and letters from 1st Field Company engineers.
This jumps out at me right here, though, these words of the hell that it must have been. It was just like swimming into death, and I must have had a guardian angel over me then. I have no wish to go through the same thing again.
Yeah.
Until now, all these words have been hidden family records, all proudly detailing being the first to land at Gallipoli, contradicting the long-accepted history.
But what you found in all of this, the diaries and the letters, a couple of dozen sources, is the same story.
What sticks out, the more you read them, that they are consistent. They tell the same story.
The level of detail that has come out of Catherine's research about who they were, I mean, personally who they were and what they did that day has been phenomenal in terms of telling a more complete picture of what happened on the very first day at the Gallipoli landing.
But the big question was, why were the sappers not only in the first boats to land, but seated in the very front of those first boats?
It's just unbelievable what he went through.
Catherine found the answer in New Zealand with 90-year-old Jack Moore.
Gee, so when you've opened up that trunk full of all of that history and all of your father's life at war, that must have been incredible.
I just couldn't believe it that one person could have done so much.
Jack's dad was a Kiwi who signed up with the engineers in Sydney in 1914. And like Tom Drain, he never stopped writing about his hell at Gallipoli.
We were lucky, we wondered. Would there be any Turks? Then, crack. Every man's heart gave a jump. I know mine did. Then crack, crack, a few seconds, then a continuous volley, which in turn was added to by the vicious, spilling cracking of machine guns with the zip, 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 as the bullets hit the water like a shower of red-hot coals.
Jack Sr.'s account of the landing is an extraordinary piece of writing, and remarkably, he also took photos. Together, they help answer the big question.
Why were they the first to land at Gallipoli?
They were charged with ripping down the barricades of barbed wire, and that they assumed the Turks had put on the beaches.
So that's why they were in the first wave, so that they'd get to the beach first to clear the way for the infantrymen.
And for that reason they were all issued with a coil of rope and a heavy grappling iron to grapple with the barbed wire and pull it out of the way, so to clear the way for the other troops to land.
Jack's father, who was known as ANZAC Jack in fact, survived the Gallipoli campaign and was decorated for his service and bravery in World War I. But the trauma of war was too much, and he took his own life back in New Zealand when his son was just 4 years old.
He must have been a complete blank at the time. The suicide note that he wrote said, "My brain is going."
And that's all he wrote. My brain is going.
That's all he wrote, yes. Mm. Anyway, that's life, isn't it?
It's hard for you, isn't it? Because your dad lives in these letters and all of these memories, but in your memory, you were such a young boy, you don't even remember him, really.
Well, I haven't discussed it with anybody the way I've discussed it with you today, so it is, you know, quite traumatic at times.
Catherine.
Andrew, at last.
Back in Tom Drain's hometown of Forbes in New South Wales,
And to think the last time our two families met, it was on the shores of Gallipoli.
his great-grandson Andrew and Catherine are meeting for the first time.
Now, Cleve and Tom were mates. Do we have a photo?
That's Cleve.
Cleve there, and here's your great-grandfather
That's him for
in
sure.
the front.
The diary and this wonderful memorabilia have always been precious to the Drain family.
Best things I have here is this, which is P.E. Drain's dog tag.
But they could never have known what was tucked away in a box would help rewrite our ANZAC history.
So you're holding in your hand something that was at Gallipoli
It was there, yeah.
at that time.
I was on that beach.
Yep.
Catherine Job's work has certainly polarised war historians and questioned the official record of the Gallipoli landings. Thankfully, she's found an ally in Brigadier Wayne Budd.
It's a matter of due recognition, isn't it?
I think it's fantastic that these young sappers at that landing can get the recognition for the work they did with the infantry. And Catherine's research and story is just great for those young men to have their history recorded, for the families of those young men to see over time that that story has endured, and for the Royal Australian Engineers to be able to read that story and be proud of the achievements of their predecessors.
Tom Drain returned to his beloved Forbes after the war and got on with life.
Died at the age of 55.
But his Gallipoli experience was never far away, and he gave his sons the middle name ANZAC, a tradition these modern-day Drains, cousins, Leo, Hugh, Sam and Archie, also share. In Whangamata, New Zealand, Jack Moore still idolises his engineer dad, and every day he wishes he had been able to spend more time with him. Of course, sapper Cleve Page never made it home. He lies with his fallen mates at the Shrapnel Valley Cemetery. You'd like to think, though, he and those 149 other Gallipoli engineers would be proud of the passionate research of great-niece Catherine.
Has it helped to be a little bit mad and crazy in your search for the truth here? Well, can I politely say, and thankfully, for those young men who landed on that beach that morning, you have been obsessive about finding the truth about their stories.
Sometimes it felt like, you'd swear, that they were reaching out. I'm saying, yes, we're here to be found. Please come and find us, keep going.
Hello, I'm Liz Hayes. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9 Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.